Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Tulsa buff in 14.0 here. This ship got an accuracy buff, a very significant one, going from cruiser dispersion down to standard destroyer dispersion. Not the full Elbing or Ragnar dispersion that is so lovely on those ships, but still, destroyer dispersion is a massive improvement over cruiser dispersion. On a ship like Tulsa, I did not enjoy it just because 6 guns and cruiser dispersion means a lot of your DPM is sort of left on the table unused just because you're missing a lot of your shells. The consistency just wasn't there. And you're going to notice throughout this video that it still will troll you from time to time. But overall, the accuracy here is so much better. It means Tulsa is much more enjoyable to play. At least in my opinion, I had a lot of fun playing this ship. A really good example here at the start is just some of the pure damage output we're seeing out of this ship. We still have Des Moines guns. We only have 6 of them, but they are still Des Moines guns, Des Moines shells, the improved AP pen angles, as well as solid alpha damage. The HE is great for lighting fires, does a lot of damage as well. In this case, I'm running a Lighthouse build in this first one, but we'll move on to a more standard build that I would recommend most people run, but very quickly racking up a lot of damage. A weak point on Tulsa, though, is going to be your maximum range. 14.9 kilometers is very bad for high tier, especially considering you can find yourself against super ships as a tier 9. Very, very tough to deal with. Tulsa gets great concealment as a counterpoint, I suppose. Under 10 kilometers with the full concealment build. 9 kilometer radar, very useful, but also you do got to get quite close to cap zones to actually cover them all. In this case, Montana pushing middle, and we're going to stick with that HE to try and relight some fires. And just the shell hits are so consistent. Something we often talk about when it comes to secondary battleships is, should you run a secondary build on a battleship? It really comes down to the hitting DPM. Not the outright DPM of those secondaries, but the hitting DPM. And that's a variety of factors, mostly including the dispersion, as well as some of the upgrades you can take on your ship. Cruisers don't have access to those secondary accuracy upgrades, so you need really solid baked-in secondary dispersion, like Napoli has. Otherwise, it's not really worth running builds like that. For battleships, of course, you got things like the Schlieffen line, the Libertad line that have very good baked-in accuracy, good pen. And I think a good example is just how Tulsa is similar to that relative to, say, the Buffalo, which does have more outright DPM at its tier. Similar tier, similar ships. They do play differently, but both American heavy cruisers. Tulsa Dispersion, though, sets it apart, allows it to catch up on its effective DPM, I guess I would say. It allows you to hit more consistently even though you have less shells. And it plays a lot like a Des Moines, surprisingly, just because of your reload. You actually also have incredible turret angles on the Tulsa. 30 degrees forward, but more importantly when you're kiting, 25 degrees. Really, really comfortable to use. It doesn't have the best armor, but oftentimes we're trying to make use of island cover as our primary armor source. Using our ASWs here, we know where the Vermont is looking. Don't need to drop ASW, but we can get a bird's eye view there. Very easy to see where this Vermont is looking. I'll show you the armor afterwards, but we have a bit of a stepped citadel. But the advantage here is that the citadel is very low, much below water in our turrets area. So I can poke my turrets around this island, and this Vermont really can't do a whole lot to us. In this case, we're also benefiting from our slow shell velocity, allowing us to arc just barely over this island. We do survive. And we got ourselves over 100k already in this game. Turning into a blowout, of course, we do expect that these days, 2025 World of Warships, it's gonna happen. But really, really nice to see the Tulsa feeling so much more consistent these days. And yes, this is the Lighthouse build, so we got heavy HE, we got the improved AP alpha damage as well. So a harder build to run, but when you get the island cover, you can still make use of it. I would definitely recommend you go with something a little more concealment friendly. That way you can sneak up on destroyers a little bit better as well. In this case, we just had to hope Shimakaze was going to push very close to us, knowing full well that we are here and have a radar. Fortunately, though, that does happen. And look at this dispersion, man. One of the main criticisms, obviously, was just the lack of dispersion on this ship. And it made it so difficult to actually do your job and deal damage to destroyers as a radar ship when you have so few shells and you're just splashing all around these destroyers. They're very small ships, right? DDs. And usually your shell volume makes up for that poor dispersion, or sometimes poor dispersion. Cruiser dispersion is still very good. But when you only have 6 shells for it and these destroyers are maneuvering, it could be a little bit awkward, I guess. I wasn't a huge fan of Tulsa. I thought it was fun, I thought it was interesting, but I didn't think it was all that good. Now I think it's a pretty fun, pretty good ship at tier 9. But the dreaded super ships matchmaker, how do you deal with this? Well, we're running the full concealment build for now, and that really helps us get into aggressive island positions without getting spotted. That's the key here. We're going to need to use some of our HP to trade or to tank some salvos as we play a little bit too aggressive in such a lightly armored cruiser and try and get in range with our main guns here. This Des Moines is basically out of our range here, so very difficult to actually get damage output. Although, double Citadel there? Certainly was not expecting that. This AP is very, very powerful. Most of the time I'm trying to use the AP in these ships just because I love how the improved pen angles works on this. The damage output is really, really fun. The other thing you can do is find islands like this, where there's a really sharp cliff that allows us to protect that vulnerable citadel in the middle of our ship, only exposing our front 2 turrets. And it is risky, certainly, but it does mean that we're probably just going to eat some overpens if any of these battleships shoot at us at those longer ranges. I'm hoping that cliff is tall enough to deal with, or hopefully block the incoming potential main salvo, GK salvo, or Columbo, which has sap, this will not work so well on. Now we go dark. Fortunately, I guess the DD went out of our main gun range, and now we can just sit here very easily and use this island cover. Just poking around, using our main guns, but still not getting spotted. It's kind of typical play for the Des Moines line, I suppose. At least at higher tier, you got to be a little bit careful. I would recommend trying range mod. The problem with that is, again, you're reducing your DPM, and it's very hard to hit shells at longer ranges as well. That's the other thing. Even with this improved dispersion, which is really nice, it's going to show off your aim, I suppose, a little bit more. Or poor aim. That's one of the problems with having such good dispersion. There's no blaming RNG here. Or less so in this case. There's still some bad salvos. But it's really difficult to play these matches. Fortunately, there's plenty of islands on this game, and the enemy team is pushed up in such a way that we're actually able to use these islands to farm over, still get damage, and not be spotted. It's not going to be easy, though, okay? I'm not going to try and sell you on this ship being awesome in these up tiers. It is very, very difficult. We're also getting quite fortunate that the enemy carrier is not going after us right now. He went to the other side of the map, so it's a little bit longer to fly this way, I guess. So not getting spotted over this island is very, very useful. But we're struggling to get quite as much damage. Our team's doing a decent job, but they are trying to push enemy spawn. I don't really like pushing enemy spawn, but we need to help out as best we can here. And I'm not getting too greedy for my rear guns here. I probably could around this island a little bit more, but just focusing on our front guns, trying to maintain a good position to not get spotted, not take damage early, is a good strategy to run as a cruiser. You get more dangerous as the game progresses because there's just less crossfires for you to deal with, less battleships shooting at you to get that overmatch, or in this case also sap damage into you. So you can afford to play a little more aggressive in the late game, and we're certainly going to see that in a little bit. And we've already farmed up over 50k. That's still not bad to start with here. It's just very fortunate that these guys are sitting within range of some of these islands here. You're certainly looking for the tier 9 matchmaker, much more so. But it can work in these games, and we're a tier 9 premium ship, so you're getting improved credit income as well. We're going to see that at the end of this game, just an insane number of credits on a match like this, just because tier 9 improved credit income is so amazing. Tulsa is really fun. If you like Des Moines, I think this is a solid ship to pick up now. Before, it was interesting, if a little bit frustrating and underwhelming. Now, I think this is a solid pickup if you're someone who does enjoy Des Moines and you want something like that playstyle at tier 9. It really feels quite similar. Not the full damage output, of course, but it feels fairly similar these days. Navarone here, also in a position where we're getting shots from behind this island and not getting detected. Although the carrier is coming in, and this will be the problem with playing the island hopping playstyle. The carrier can come and strike you without your AA really interacting with the planes too much. He's actually taking a really bad approach angle. It's a supercarrier, so it really doesn't matter. But if he took a better approach angle towards us, he could have eliminated a lot of the AA fire as he was getting to our ship. AA will not shoot through islands, and because of that, playing on islands means you're a lot weaker to carriers in that regard, as well as the spotting here being a little bit tricky. It's one of the reasons why I backed away as well, just because I didn't want the potential of the Navarone being able to shoot at me. Moving forward a bit, our team has lost a lot of the advantage that we did have, and we've repositioned because, again, don't want to push spawn. That's really not going to go so well. GK very close by. Also a Satsuma pushing our spawn, although hopefully he will go down here. Very tricky to deal with this. Enemy main Colombo in their spawn. Who knows where they're going to go? My guess is that one of them is going for A, one of them is going to either go up the channel or go to the decap here, since that's kind of the direction that I'm pointed towards. GK is not a ship we want to brawl, but maybe we can make use of this island poking technique, only showing our bow, which will likely only take overpens from this guy. And we get lucky. I showed a little too much, a little more than I wanted to. But now we get some juicy full pens into his upper belt, and actually the bow as well. We're going to see some insane salvos, nearly 7,000 damage just from our front two turrets. That's 4 shells. It's really strong, man. It's a really fun ship to play, I gotta say. And GK reversing like this, and another big hit into his bow. Improved pen angles, AP. It's really fun, these American heavy cruisers. I've always really enjoyed them, and it's really cool to see Tulsa here at tier 9 get a nice buff. I'm really glad it wasn't just a DPM buff. I'm loving these dispersion buffs, I gotta say. More consistency is really, really fun. You feel like you're rewarded for playing well much more often. Of course, the problem is with this update, there might be a dispersion mod bug where it's applying twice. We still don't know. We haven't really received any confirmation or denial from Wargaming. It's hard to tell visually if it's actually applying or not, so I don't know. But DD dispersion is a massive buff over just standard cruiser dispersion. So in this case, I'm kind of willing to say this is really, really nice, and I really like it, even if it is a little bit better than it otherwise would be if this buff is applying. Now you might be wondering, why did I go broadside to that rocket strike? Well, I'm still worried about that main, right? We haven't seen him. We see the Colombo in A. I'm really worried that he's actually on his way back to the decap to come deal with us here. So that's why I'm trying to hug this island as close as I can. It hurts a lot to take that salvo from the carrier rockets, but I was kind of making a calculation there that it's probably better to take that than to go broadside to the main. Now I'm forced to go broadside to a potential main, so a little bit awkward there. Fortunately for us, he's actually not here, so we get to deal with this carrier. I was really sad that we didn't get any citadels on this carrier when he was flat broadside there at closer ranges, and I'm going to skip forward because you don't need to see me getting tortured on cooldown by this carrier. I'm managing to survive, though, somehow, against a super carrier. Very, very fortunate. I guess he's not very good at dropping these light cruisers or a heavy cruiser here. Tulsa is small enough and maneuverable enough. We can avoid a lot of the incoming damage. Unfortunately, though, with this extra spotting, although we'd be spotted by the carrier anyway, I got to worry about Colombo and the main getting cross shots here. So, again, calculating that I can afford to eat 2 torpedoes here and trying to stay angled to the potential guys that battleship salvos from the north here. And we do manage to take out the Supercarrier. Very cool AA defense expert. We managed to take him down after a very, very long time. But plane spotting here does keep us lit, and here comes that northern battleship salvo. So either I go broadside to the battleship salvo and die to the sap, or I try and avoid that and then accelerate, and maybe there's a torp gap for us, but not to be here. 190,000 damage, over 106,000 1,000 plane damage, a defense expert in a tier 9 against super ships. I'm very happy with that game, even if it is a little disappointing we lost that one. Given that it's a tier 9 against super ships, pretty happy with how that went. Solid base XP in this one, and just look at those credits, eh? Very, very nice to see a tier 9 cruiser like this performing so well. Nearly 2 million credits on a loss? Absolutely wild. I wouldn't really recommend playing it close range open water against a Freddy and a Columbo, but there's going to be games where it's just over, right? There's blowouts. So I'm going to try and just full send in here and try and get a little bit more damage and see if we can't survive a little bit longer here against this Freddy. We don't have the armor to bounce any of their shells, okay? So we do just need to hope for overpens or avoiding their incoming salvos. Much harder to do without that Lighthouse rudder shift crazy build that I'm going to show you in a little bit here, but still we can manage it. Getting some fires, pop the damage control on the Freddy, instantly swap to our AP because it's going to do really, really nice alpha damage. As soon as the damage control is out though, we are going to swap back to the HE, trying for fires. We get one right away. The DPM feels really, really good here. Not because it's especially powerful DPM, it's because we're hitting so many shells so consistently. It doesn't feel like we're really wasting any shots here. I really, really like that. In this case, we also have arms race buffs, so we are getting a nice advantage there as far as helping us stay alive. A little bit of healing, but the secondaries are going to take us out pretty quickly, as well as Sap, obviously. Sap as well. We can't forget about that. But look at the damage as we've been fighting this Freddy here. We've already racked up, I think, over 50k in this short period of time. It's really nice. If you haven't played Tulsa in a while, you really should check it out. This is a really fun ship to play now, and a really good buff. Much like Zhao, not directly buffing the damage or making it overpowered in any gimmicky way, just giving it a small consistency buff. Turret angles on Zhao, little bit of better dispersion on a ship with only 6 guns here, makes it more consistent. I really like this, I gotta say. Really happy with these buffs, especially Tulsa and Zhao. And obviously I had a lot of fun with Republic as well, but that one I'm a little worried about this potential bug. Still not sure about it being legit or not, whether it's just UI or it actually applies in-game. I thought about making that video today, whether or not I should or not, about that bug, trying to describe it. It's so hard to get any sort of accuracy about it because it's just a lot of speculation is really what it comes down to. I got some theories, but really would be nice to hear from Wargaming directly about this bug, but so far been very, very quiet. As for the Tulsa here, definitely would recommend you build it like this a little bit more, just because it's more consistent, it's easier to play, you're not as punished for your concealment. 14.9 detect is 14.9 range, sorry, is pretty bad for those double up tiers, even up tiers into tier 10. It's hard to use, so running full concealment means you're much easier or much more able to get up to those aggressive islands without getting detected and blown out of the water by all those long-range battleships that you got to deal with. Range is something you could try. I will confess that I just prefer the reload. I just really like the DPM output and repositioning rather than trying to farm from those longer ranges. But hey, you get up to 17.2. That's relatively usable still. Personally, will stick with reload. And honestly, I would probably stick with this build as well. The full damage output Lighthouse thing. It's way too greedy, man. It's so hard to play with. And this isn't actually the full thing because I got to swap out concealment for steering gear. So 13.5 detect, 14.9 range, full Lighthouse. It's hard. It's really, really hard. But the damage output, man, the damage is pretty good with this one. You get such high HE alpha damage as well as AP alpha. It's really, really good. Although the damage output was still really awesome, even with the more standard build. Notice 27 everywhere. Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. You do want to be avoiding incoming fire. You want to be avoiding battleship salvos, hiding behind islands, all of that. But look at this Citadel. Little stepped thing here, but notice that these front turrets are, well, the Citadel's very far below water. That's what I meant by when I was poking around the island and just shooting these guns on the second game there, at least at the beginning. And then I tried to hide as much as my ship as I could behind a giant rock and then just poke the front turrets out. If the battleships shoot here, they're probably just going to overpan, right? Probably. Didn't test that theory, fortunately, didn't have to worry, but you know, that's kind of the thought process there. And hopefully you're reacting in time to reverse behind the island as well. Obviously, much better to make use of those islands you can fire over while being fully undetected, right? That's going to be the main goal of this ship. It has poor shell velocity, but that's an advantage in situations where you can fire over a lot of islands and farm that way. As always, it's much better to save your HP early on in the cruisers, as it's much more advantageous to trade away some HP in the late game since you have less battleships, less cruiser DPM to worry about, and you're probably going to get more value out of that traded away HP in the late game. But that's going to do it for the Tulsa buff in update 14.0 here. Very cool, very happy with this one. I'm going to play this ship much more now. I had a lot of fun with it. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.